Welcome to Adjunctitis, from surviving to thriving, teaching hacks to reduce stress, save time, and avoid common pitfalls. I'm April Brown, an associate professor of journalism at Cal State LA. Welcome back to Season 2. I'm pleased to say Adjunctitis is a 2024 Webby honoree in the advice and how-to category. But I'm really interested in finding out whether new professors, adjuncts, and even longtime profs are getting something out of this. If you're listening chronologically, let me quickly restate something I mentioned early in Season 1. If you're in a crisis, please find the episode that most directly addresses your issue. And if there isn't one, please let me know. I'll do my best to make one. One of the reasons I started this pod is because it can be really tough to find colleagues to ask, sometimes. In this episode, I have a little help from several friends. So welcome to episode 18. You are not alone, and it's not just me saying that. First, a story. And this time it's not one of mine, but that of Toni Diaztlan-Smith. She's an assistant professor of practice at Purdue University. Recently, we talked about her first experience teaching in higher ed. When you first walked into the classroom after working life, were you afraid? Were you excited? Was it all of the above? How did you feel going in there?
I think I was overly confident because in my mind, I had been working with adults long in their careers at one of the top levels of my industry. And I thought to myself, how could undergrads be any more difficult? And surprised myself to find out that, it's a whole other ballgame of difficult.
I remember you were very early on, because I came in kind of the same way. It's like, oh, I can do this. I know journalism. It's going to be absolutely fine. It will go across to them, no problem. My high standards, I'm going to keep them. And you said to me, and I distinctly remember this, you will have to lower your standards. I'm like, no, no, no. But you were absolutely right. And it wasn't, that
That's a horrible way to say something. I'm so sorry.
well, you were right. I mean, yes, I didn't lower my standards entirely, but what I did was I didn't bring in the highest standard at the very beginning, which is kind of what I thought I could do based on the way I was taught and the way I learned.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so,
same, exactly. I thought I'd be coming into a situation with people who their lives are dedicated to the craft, as I was at that age. They wanted to learn, they were going to take notes, they're going to be extra studious. I remember I didn't even assign um like quizzes to readings. I assumed the students would just do the readings and then we could discuss them in class. And then I had a student literally come up to me and say, if you don't tell us that you're going to test us on anything to read, we're not going to read it. And that's when I was like, oh, I I have to have, more of a carrot stick situation for this whole thing. People are not here for the growth potential. they're here for the grades and to get out. And I needed to structure the learning in that way because I still wanted them to learn the material. I still value what I'm teaching. It's just about working within the system that's already been created. And I didn't realize that that system was there while I was out in industry working, right? You don't know how school is, or you don't think about it much. And then you show up and you're like, oops, things have changed in 20 years.
next up, my colleague Julian Reyes. He's an adjunct faculty member at Cal State LA and pivoted to teaching relatively recently. He has found it to be an eye-opening experience. It's like one of the major shocks or surprises for you in higher ed.
I would say Canvas. Yeah, yeah, that's something that I find difficult because I'm so old school.
Canvas is our campus learning management system.
I'm used to like making copies and passing them out and having them take notes and not having to post it. Like all that I'm not used to. And it's just, I just don't get it, if that makes any sense. That's been the most difficult because some of you say, Professor, are you gonna like put it on Canvas? I was like, oh, okay. And it's like when I hear that, I'm like, kill me now, because I have to learn it. But there's so many avenues you can go when you're learning that. There's so many things to learn, and that's why I've been coming to you. Yeah, it's been, yeah. So I came to you, help, April, help.
What were your expectations going into teaching? Did you have an idea in your head of what it would be?
My cousin asked me this yesterday, in fact. And this is going to sound, I'm going to throw myself under the bus. I really thought when I got the job, I'm like, I'm a professor now. They're going to have to do exactly what I say, how I say it, when I say it, and I was really pompous to think that in my head. Like I'm, I walked in there like that like more of a disciplinary, more a little bit, I was just very pompous in my thinking. And once I got into it, I'm like, no, these students are here to learn. They're depending on me to learn this. And it kind of like slowed my roll down a lot. I really took a step back, because I've always been one, and I would say it stopped when my son was born, that I've always been vain. I love the fact that I was on air. And when I first started my career, I was doing it for free because I was on air. So that vanity stays with you for a very long time. And it wasn't until my son was born, I'm like, I don't need this vanity. I'm okay with it. There's more important things than me. Look at me, I'm on TV. And a student did ask me that recently, I think 2 months ago. They're like, don't you miss it? And I was like, you know what? I don't. I don't miss the waking up in the morning and getting in the makeup chair and the vanity portion of it, but I do miss the deadlines and the fast pace of a newsroom. But that's pretty much it. So it really humbled me. Becoming a professor really has humbled me a lot in a way that I no longer want to go in with, I'm the end all be all and I know it all, because I really don't. And so my approach is completely different and my thoughts are completely different from when I started.
I will give you a lot of credit for saying that, because I think a lot of us, when you go from whatever industry you're in to teaching, you're like, I have a lot to give and they're going to want to listen to me, and I will speak and they will breathe it all in. And the fact of the matter is, at least for me, you can tell them all sorts of things, but that's not necessarily teaching them.
Correct.
And that, if you get that, that's a huge, I think, shift to becoming a more effective teacher, that you let go of that. So kudos to you for figuring out,
Thank you.
And acknowledging it and saying it out loud, because that is also a step that a lot of people would not take. And I think that's important. And I think people who listen will also take comfort in that, because most adjuncts do not come from a background of teaching. We come from some other profession, and we go into teaching, most of us, I think, because we have a lot to give and we want to give it and we think that we are qualified to do it. But you get in the classroom and it doesn't always translate.
And what I found interesting is that the students, they thrive off of learning. At least my first 3 semesters, I could tell that they really wanted to be there and they really wanted to learn.
When you get into a classroom as kind of the classroom leader for the first time, you're the teacher, those are the students. Was it awkward, difficult, strange, or just because you've been a broadcast professional, something that you do?
I was scared. I was definitely scared. I was more scared than even when I went live for the first time. Because I know when I went live for the first time, I looked like a deer in the headlights. But I was really scared because I'm like, every word that comes out of my mouth, they're either going to write it down or they're going to remember it. And I need to make sure that it's accurate. And even if they go check, what I'm saying, I need to make sure that it's right, because I don't want to lead them the wrong way. So it was very nerve-wracking. I'm not like embarrassed or scared to perform in front of anybody, but for some reason, when I walked into that first class, I was like petrified. I was like, oh my gosh, they're all staring at me, and hopefully I say the golden words that, that they'll take away from the class. But yeah, it took me about 3 weeks to get over the stage fright.
What were some of the things that you did to help you get over it?
My wife basically would tell me, you got this, you've performed before, you've gone live 100 times. Like, this is just the same thing.
Your wife, who's a teacher.
Who's a teacher. Yeah. She's a first grade teacher for LAUSD, but she kind of, she cheered me on. And after a while, I'm like, I was co-teaching at the time with, Monica Tamayo. And so I was like, well, she could do it, I can do it, and that's kind of the approach I took.
Finally, another bit of advice from Anjali Anderfuren from the University of Michigan. She was one of the people I met when I first started teaching full-time and was kind enough to help me through some of those really tough spots. Here, we're talking about imposter syndrome, a condition we actually share with many of our students. We all have that feeling at some point.
Oh, all the time, right? Particularly, there's studies, like particularly women and people of color are more likely to feel that imposter syndrome effects, right? And so just knowing that exists, somehow that makes me feel better. So I feel like that also makes students feel better. And I also feel like being honest with the students too about like, hey, this is the first time I'm teaching X. I have all this experience, here's my background. You really should trust me. But this is that we're going to go through this together. But also, if you have ideas, please share them with me, because I don't know if this is going to work, right? I think that that's really helpful for students and getting good feedback from the students and making your next class better. Plus, some of my students have told me like how much they love the idea that the thing that they came up with is going to be in the next semester, right? And because I'll have students that be like, the next semester, like, oh, so-and-so was in your class last semester and she's my roommate and I can't wait for this thing that we're going to do in here. And I love hearing that. But it's like, and then when they hear back, like, oh yeah, we made this change. And she said it was because of like the ideas that your class had. Like, oh, okay, that's really exciting. Like to know that you're actually being listened to, I feel like helps with that too. It helps with that idea of like breaking down that imposter syndrome too. Like if everybody was honest about it, then we wouldn't have to feel so isolated. I think it kind of hits that isolation idea that you were talking about going in. You're going in, you don't know anybody. Everybody else seems to know everybody and everything, but they don't either. That's the secret, right, to anything. So, like something I learned when I was an intern that one of my mentors told me about, act like you should be there. If you act like you should be there, people will treat you like you should be there. And that's really step one, right? But everybody feels like that though. So if you just go in like, I should be here, I belong here just like everybody else, then, that's starting out on the right foot. And that helps with that imposter syndrome that really can break you down.
That's all we have for this episode. My great thanks to guests Tony Diaztlan-Smith, Julian Reyes, and Anjali Anderfuren for sharing their wisdom. If you have questions you'd like me to try and answer, please send them to questions@adjunctitis.com. Meanwhile, social media is a great tool for everyone to get involved in the conversation. Help your friends. Right now we're on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube with the handle @adjunctitis. And you can find us on Facebook too at facebook.com/adjunctitis. If you liked the show, consider giving us a rating. It helps others find us. Please spread the word and help those who ask you for help. It's good teaching karma. Adjunctitis is a Look at It This Way production. I'm April Brown. Thank you for listening. Class dismissed.